Hey, what are you doing? Come here. Okay, look, you can't just be out in the open like this. Okay, they're gonna see us. Listen. Okay, I'm glad you can make it, but you're gonna get us caught if you just stay like that. Listen, I'm gonna tell you something that Big FMC doesn't want you to know. Okay? Domino reductions. You heard of them? Of course you have. Domino reductions are not as hard as everyone makes them out to be. Now, I don't know what it is. Every time I've asked someone who does domino reductions in their solves, how they do it, what their strategy is, they give me some kind of cryptic answer. They don't really explain it. It's like, you just do the moves and then it's reduced to a domino. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look up a domino reduction. There are other sources that tell you what it is, and I just haven't been able to get a straight answer out of anyone as to how to do them. So I figured it out myself. I'm working my way into the domino reduction from the outside. I don't know what that means, from the inside. Listen, the point is, I figured out, and by I figured out, I mean other people figured out, and I kind of watched what they were doing and imitated them. How to do a domino reduction, kind of, in a way that's easier for a human brain to understand, that breaks it down into sub-steps, that actually works, and you can do it. And I've never seen anyone talking about this before, and I don't know why no one's talked about this before, because it's not that hard. But whenever I ask someone about how to do a domino reduction, they give me vague answers. Listen, I'm gonna tell you how to do a domino reduction, but you gotta promise you're not gonna tell anyone you heard it from me, okay? I think they're gonna come after me. All right, anyway, let's get into it. I'm gonna show you how to do the reduction itself now. All right. Oh, that was loud. Okay, let's not do that again. Okay, so how to get to a domino reduction? Well, in order to make this video appeal to as wide a base of people as possible, I'm going to walk us back through some other concepts to go into before going into how to actually do a domino reduction. DR, of course, is when you have all the top and bottom oriented, as well as these E-layer edges oriented from both different ways you can, both different fronts you can have while they're facing you. You basically reduced the cube to the move set R2, UD, F2, B2, and L2. So every single case that has a domino reduction like this can be solved using only those moves. How to get here, though? Well, first let's think of a 2x2x2. How do you get to a 2x2x2? And this is a thing that I learned way back when I first learned FMC from Not Kevin Young, who taught me a lot of the things I know today. And what he told me was that when you're thinking of a 2x2x2 block, what is the move that you have to do before you get to a 2x2x2 block? Well, it's either going to be some kind of single move like that, or it's going to be a double turn. But either way, the move before you get to this, you have to have something where you have a square plus sort of an edge in between two centers. And that square needs to go on top of it. That will always be the last move before your 2x2x2. So instead of going for a 2x2x2, what you can go for is a case with a square and a line, like that. Now, you can go further back and think, well, what do you need before you get to a 2x2x2? Well, you need to have a pair and an edge connected to the center that it goes with. And you can sort of break down basically anything in FMC by thinking, what do I need to get to before I get to this? Now, for example, a 2x2x3. A 2x2x3, there are two ways to get it, two things you can do before you get there. You can either have a square plus a 2x2x2, that's probably the most common way, or a line like this plus a big old 1x2x3. Now it's probably review for a lot of people, pretty basic stuff. But now let's think about that in the context of a domino reduction. So before you get to a domino reduction, let's think of what moves you can use to get into this. It's obviously not going to be U or D, because that doesn't change the orientation of any pieces. It's not going to be any kind of double turn. So it has to be a turn of one of the front, left, or right faces. Let's hold it from standard orientation so that is less confusing. Left, front, right, or back. And it has to be a single quarter turn, not a half turn. So let's do that move. So before you get to a domino reduction, you're going to have a state like this. Now looking at this state, there's some things we can identify about it. For instance, the number of misoriented corners, 4 misoriented corners, as well as 2 E-layer edges, so you've got your E-layer here. 2 edges from the E-layer are not placed. So what this tells me is that if we can get the cube into a state with 4 misoriented corners and 2 E-layer edges not placed, everything else being oriented, we'll be able to set up to a move like this to do a domino reduction. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's just take this back, do some like domino moves, you know. All of these moves are within the domino move set, so this should retain the orientation of all those pieces. All right, here we go. So as you can see, in this case, we have 4 misoriented corners and 2 E-layer edges that are not placed. So first, and by the way, this is the sort of thing where you're only going to want to do this if you actually have a good case. This right here, for example, not a great case. There's not too many good ways to solve a domino reduction from here. That's just because I mixed it up completely randomly. But in a solve, you'll be able to judge that on a case-by-case basis and make an intelligent decision as to whether or not you want to do one. So let's look at this though, and just for the sake of example, doing it with a pretty difficult case, let's just see how we would. So another thing I forgot to mention about that state before the domino reduction is done. You're going to have both your misoriented E-layer, or your misplaced E-layer edges, or the ones that go on the top and bottom that are in the E-layer, they need to be next to each other and they need to be orientable with a single move like that. That doesn't mess up the other pieces. So for instance, like this would do that, would bring them to the top and bottom, but they would be misoriented. So they're going to have to be on the same face like this. That should be fairly intuitive. And then you're also going to need 2 bars. What I call this structure a bar. Let me set one up. Here we go. Here's a bar where you have an edge with 2 corners facing out from it. Kind of like a pear, right? But then it's a pear on the other side too, and it's not literally a pair of pieces. Like, this doesn't have to actually be paired. It just has to have the orientations in the same orientation like a pair. So I call this a bar. So what you need for a domino reduction is a bar, another bar on the bottom, and then your 2 edges in the right places. So anyway, let's just go ahead and mix this up again, get a random case to start. All right, so we actually already have a solved bar here. That's nice. Down here we have most of a bar. So this is actually a good example of a case where a domino reduction is a pretty good idea. So let's do it. So first of all, we already have this bar made, so we want to make this bar. How are we going to do that? Well, pretty simple. We could pull that down to there. That would make the bar, but it leaves our edges in a bad position because they're in the case where if you did that, they would be misoriented. So ideally, I'd like to bring this one over to this face so that it'll be orientable like that, or this one over to this face so it'll be orientable like that. Either approach could work. In this case, the first one I see, although in this case it actually looks pretty symmetrical, so you could do either. But the first thing I see is to do U, D prime. Okay, so what that does is basically, since we already know that can make the bar, that's going to move both the top and the bottom layer, so the bar can still be made just like that with a single move. But that single move is also the move we need to bring this edge over to the other side. And now we're just 2 setup moves away from having the 1 move away case. And there you go, there's a domino reduction. So once you get to the single move case with 2 misplaced E-layer edges and 4 misoriented corners, you should be able to figure out intuitively how to set it up into the single move. This is just one approach, by the way. You can also do, well, anything you do is going to eventually have to be a single move like that, but let's, for the sake of argument, or for the sake of example, let's show a case like this. This is a case where you have only 1 misplaced E-layer edge and 3 misoriented corners. You can set them up to a structure like this and do an insert like that, or of course continuing it like that. That case you can experiment with, figure out what these look like for yourself. They should look like winter variation cases, or they're analogous to winter variation cases, really, like the most basic, like 3-move insert winter variation cases, and you should be able to figure those out. I tend to not like doing that as much because that's a 3-move insert, so once you get all your pieces oriented correctly, then you have to set them up into the right positions to do the 3-move insert. Then you're doing 3 moves, whereas if you're doing the single move case, you're only doing 1 move, so that's inherently a bit better. But the 3-move case can still be good. Of course, it all depends. So those are the 2 main ways I would use to get into a domino reduction. Once you have all the correct number of pieces oriented the correct ways, you should be able to figure out how to set it up, keeping in mind looking at the different structures that are made. But let's talk about now how to actually get into the case where you have it set up like that. So I'm going to use an example, and keep in mind this is from one of my best domino reduction solves. Actually is my best domino reduction solve yet. And so it's definitely a lucky case, because you need to get lucky. Like with anything in FMC, you need to get a little bit lucky in order to have a good solve. So here's the scramble, or at least this is the inverse of the scramble, but you don't know that because you don't know what the scramble is. Anyway, I did EO. That's how I usually start these things, is I do EO, because that way you're just left with some E layer edges that need to be placed. So that was EO from red front. Then I looked at this and I was like, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I already have 4 oriented corners, so I'm already in the case with 4 misoriented corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. However, I have 3 E layer edges that need to be placed. So how do I place those without changing the number of misoriented corners? And the answer is pretty simple. What you want to do is just make sure that whatever moves you do are going to leave you with the same number of misoriented corners. And you want to do moves that will place 1 E layer edge. So I see that here I have 2 E layer edges that are missing, so I can do an F like that to bring them out and bring this E layer edge into the E layer. But doing so, that would mess up 3 corners and only fix 1. It's pretty easy to tell when you'll fix a corner. You should just be able to experiment and see that. So that's -3 plus 1 is a net of -2 corners. So I'm not going to have the correct number of corners. I want to get a net of 0 corners. Now, corners, since they have 3 different orientations, it can be solved in a case like this where it's going to be solved with 1 move, or it can be kind of neutral where it won't change. In this case, I have these 2 bad corners over here, so I did U2, and these are actually both neutral because they're misoriented now, and if I do this move, they're still both going to be misoriented. Again, you should be able to tell that just by kind of looking at it. So after doing that U2, now I can do F or F prime, and that'll leave me with 4 edges and 4 corners. How do I know that? Because, again, 4, I have 4 right now, -1 because this gets messed up, +1 because this one gets solved, so that's 0, and these 2 are both neutral, nothing happens to them, so that's still a net of 4. So you can just do some simple arithmetic to tell that this move is going to leave me in the case that's set up to a single move for a domino reduction. But I actually did it the other way because I noticed that doing it the other way sets up this corner an edge pair, which is part of the bar formation that I was talking about earlier. From here, I made 2 more bars. So the first one, I paired this misoriented corner with this little pair over here, and by doing an R2 to do that, it also brought these 2 bad edges into the correct spots on the E layer where they can be solved with a move. So now I have a full bar, half a bar here, and the edges are in the correct place, so I'm almost there. Now there are a couple ways you can handle it from here. You can do U2, B2. That is acceptable. What that leaves you with is 1 bar down here, 1 over here, and then you're going to have 2 more setup moves to the domino reduction itself. But you can also do D2, F2. You'll notice that a lot of things when you're dealing with domino reductions, a lot of the time, it's like if you can do D2, F2, you can also do U2, B2. You'll see there's a lot of things that are symmetrical like that, and sometimes one of them will be better. In this case, this was much better because it leaves this bar, it connects the bar to the 2 edges, then connects the other bar, so that one's already in place, so it's just 1 more move than a domino reduction. So anyway, I hope you were able to follow that, and by the way, I'm not going to talk at all about what to do from here because I'm not as good at that part. You just kind of have to make blocks and solve corners because corners are harder to solve than edges, or at least harder to insert. And yeah, anyway, that's a brief overview of how to get to domino reductions. With this method, you should be able to consistently, with enough practice, I was already pretty good at EO and stuff, and yeah, with enough practice, you should be able to fairly consistently get in the range of 12 to 14 move DRs with this. I'm pretty confident I could get a 10 move DR in any scramble given enough time. Of course, time is the issue, and that's something I need to get faster at. But yeah, this is a fairly consistent method to get relatively good domino reductions. And yeah, hopefully this video, I know very long, hopefully it was a good explanation, and I hope it shed some light on domino reductions because I've never seen anyone give a very good explanation of them before. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.